La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football. Benvenuti everyone to La Lanterna podcast. Here is Fabrizio with my best buddy
Matt. Good to see you, Fabry. How are you?
Hey Matt, all is funky dory, like super duper, I guess. The effects of Gilardino are just like tremendous.
Yeah.
3 goals for, 0 taken, and an amazing now, obviously, after the game against the lead of the league, Frosinone. Now it's 2 wins and 1 tie.
Yeah, 7 points out of a possible 10. Not a bad
average.
Not a bad average at all, no.
Yeah. So I guess we went into, I was listening to the podcast once again in the car, as that's my best place to listen to the podcast. And I'm sure most of you are actually doing that right now. But yeah, we went into the match a little bit on the, not saying negative, but a little bit, because
a little bit. I was saying negative things already. I was upset.
It's okay. It's normal, because I was actually glad that we didn't record immediately after the match, because I would have been super negative myself too. But then I had time to take a breath, understand better that it was a difficult match anyways to go out in Ascoli. Yeah. And it was a good result overall. Now, the match at the Ferraris with the lead, finally, we saw a better Genoa, the one that we saw against, I guess, Südtirol as well. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that it was like an open face type of approach from both sides. So it wasn't like your typical catenaccio that you see a lot of teams coming in Genova and do in Marassi, and trying to stop us and like block any type of games and whatnot. But this way, sure, they had opportunities as well, but we had our own as well. Like I remember like a few that were like quite close calls as well. Like, I don't know, Aramo, like the reborn Aramo once again, Puskas and whatnot, a little bit even Coda. We'll talk about Coda in a second, but no, it was an overall a good match. What do you think?
It was a good match, and it was kind of, I think it was somewhat a tale of two halves, which is kind of interesting because we scored in the first one, and the group chat in New York was kind of going off on this a little bit too. I mean, I think like there were some immediate things, and I think probably to anybody that watched the game, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more, you saw a really good amount of will from the Genoa team, and in particular, I think Mattia Bani had like several like basically critical like clears at the goal line and other things that he had done, either some saving tackles or whatever it might be. I think he actually almost had a goal one time, but there was a little bit of a comment on, despite us going up, despite us taking that early advantage, the first half did definitely seem more like Bari were on the offensive, and in fact the statistics at the time were very much more on Bari's side of things. I think we had that one shot from the corner, which was our goal, of course. But they had,
if I may say, sorry to interrupt, but finally a piece goal from
what was that piece?
Yeah, like seriously, like
when was the last time we saw one? Honestly,
probably, I'm just guessing here, for sure in Serie A last year.
Is that insane? Like not a single.
No free kick, no from the corner, nothing. It was all in either through penalty or through action.
Who actually took Aramu took the corner? I think. I don't know. I know Goodmanson scored.
Yeah, they first attributed to Bani, but
they did.
Eker did, poor guy. But it was actually Goodmanson just the last time. I'm going to say Aramu because I would have thought it would come from him.
Yeah, it would seem like him, maybe Yagello or something, but I think probably Aramu was the guy that delivered it. I didn't get as clear of a look at that myself. And yeah, the attribution thing I think has been a little bit of a problem. We've seen some subs come in sometimes that like announcing names, like that's not who you guys are. Anyway, that aside, we were one way of looking at the first half of the match was maybe we were a little bit fortunate to be up 1-0, which I think is a little bit pessimistic, to be honest. But the second half, we really looked like we belonged in that game. And I think it was very much more, we were controlling possession. We had much more shots. I think at the end, we maybe just edged it in a few of those categories, but it really seemed like we were fully in control from that second half onwards. And it was kind of an impressive display, honestly, against a Frosinone side that, like, as you mentioned, came into it atop of the league, and I guess they must have been 9 points clear of us at the time. So, yeah, assisted by Bani. That's right, because he did have that little nudge on. That's right. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think made the difference for us in this game versus some of the others that we've struggled with in?
This is a tough one because as I said, it's like it was an open face type of match.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the fewest times I see that we had less possession compared to the opponent. So we were 40, at least these are the stats that I'm looking at, 48 against 52. So it's like bare mim difference.
Yes.
Yeah. You can technically say that's like equal. But usually it's quite predominant, our type of our possession. Shots on goal are almost equal as well.
Yeah.
4-3 for us, 3 for Frosinone, and even the overall shots were 15 for us and 14 for Frosinone. So very, very balanced. I would say that even if we came out of that match with a tie, Frosinone would have, I'm not saying they would have deserved it, but it would have been okay. Even though I do think that our shots on goal were a lot, I don't know. I don't know. It was just well deserved because overall, I'm going to turn it around to a different thing, because if I look at the stats, it's just 100% equal in my opinion. I'm going to say that we have started to see that with Gilardino. We have been supporting Blessing since the get-go, but I'm starting to see a lot more unity that I had only seen back when Blessing actually arrived, back when we were in Serie A, in that horrible, difficult moment, which got lost, I don't know, throughout the summer or whenever that happened. And we know how the season went. I mean, it's not that we're in a bad position because we're in the third spot together now with Bari. But at the same time, I think that what made the team, what made us win is more and more and more unity.
The unity was, I mean, that was certainly something that I think watching the game you saw. And there was a little bit of I could understand some of the concerns after the first half in particular of how we had approached it, because I do think we were more open and exposed, and it calls back maybe to, so not to get into the formation talk already again, but I think it seems like Gila's preferred formation is more of like a 4-3-3.
Absolutely, yes.
versus like the 4-2-3-1 that we saw so much from Blessing. And I'm not sure if this is a factor of the way we're approaching the game with that lineup, or the lineup itself, or whatever it is. It does feel generally like it's not like we're conceding a ridiculous amount of chances, but we do seem to concede more decent chances. And there were a couple, like we mentioned, Bari clearing off the line. Semper had some good saves. Those could have been goals, that could have happened a different way, kind of with a coin.
Listen, one thing that I have to say throughout the year, the current Serie B year, anyways, the season, is luck has never been too much on our side.
Yeah.
So it's catching up, I think. I mean, it'll take a while before it catches up to be equal, but nevertheless, I'm bringing back that Parma match. It's like, come on, seriously, Parma with those 2 goals, that was like super luck, right?
Yeah.
And I think that a little bit of luck is good. not the goal itself was not like a clear shot, even though I think even if Goodmanson hadn't touched it, maybe it would have gone in anyways. I don't know. I don't want to know. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, right. Well, and kind of the point I was trying to make is, I think possibly what Blessing might have been doing before is playing more conservative in that defensive side of things. But we saw it cost us in a lot of matches when we didn't have an Ekuban, when we didn't have, I think it's understated but important, like a guy like Payac, because of the way he was wanting to play. When those guys weren't in the lineup, we stopped, and all that fight and that effort and even those like attacking chances, they seem to kind of go away. And what you're seeing now with Gila, okay, maybe the games are a little bit more open. Maybe it is really a little bit more end to end, which is kind of enjoyable for a neutral perspective. But we also are generally creating more opportunities. And we didn't see it quite as much in the first half of this match, but we definitely saw it in the second half. And I think the team is starting to kind of figure out the way they can all kind of work together. And even though we have, maybe the middle part of the pitch and even you could say the front six is maybe not exactly how you would usually line up with a 4-3-3. It seems to work pretty well, frankly. And
I was going to add to that. Like I like your opening about the fact that Gilardino seems to be preferring the 4-3-3, which we have seen that in the Primavera on his formations.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think it's also a little bit dictated on the base of what players we have at hand right now.
Yeah.
Because of the qualities and the characteristics. For example, there were rumors during the week that Badel could have returned, and so we were talking. It was looking like a possibility of a 4-3-1-2. So it would have been different, and so on. Nevertheless, in a little bit of an influence, a little bit of flu or something like that on Badel's side.
Yeah.
So that's what made him not being able to join the match itself. But yeah, and again, Sabelli, even though I still think he is doing an excellent job, he's outside of his, let's call it comfort zone, but it's not his role. Let's put it that way. He is a right back. He's not a left back.
Yeah.
But he is able to also go on the left side, which opens, again, as I mentioned that a while back, more and more and more rumors talking about Mimo Criscito.
I know. I've been seeing this all over the place about him coming back in.
So a lot of people are against, a lot of people are for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who is against. I don't know who is for. I think that whoever is against is, well, one thing that I would be agreeing with is the fact that he's starting to be of age, which does not go in sync in line with, a future and whatnot. But at the age itself. On the pro side, one more against is also the fact of, and I think this is a silly part. That's why I was almost skipping it, essentially because of the penalty that got missed on the derby and the fact that he did that. Exactly. Like, seriously, I remember.
Oh, God. Don't make me relive that moment again.
I remember even when he did come back, because you remember he was.
Yeah, that was like the initial report, right?
Exactly. And then when he did come back, oh my God, there was like a jump in quality on the defense side that was tremendous. And that's what, in my opinion, actually brought us very close to be to remain in Serie A. So let's not forget that. And
right,
going against those people that are saying, it's my opinion, of course, but saying, oh no, we don't want what we call in Italian minestra riscaldata, which means the soup that is reboiled, reheated, which means that it's an old player coming back again. I'm saying, yes, you are right that we should be focusing on future, but if we want to go to Serie A, we also have to be ready. So if you want to have someone, let's look at the players that we got in January, like the Veres Hefty, which was probably the only one that was like super ready immediately, but Frendrup and Goodmanson and so on, they were not ready immediately. They needed time to integrate, to learn, and so on and so forth. So I think that for the immediate, it's great. And then let's build on the future going forwards.
I mean, I agree too. Look, I think It is silly. I saw some comments out there saying like, "Oh, for me, this seems like a ceremonial thing. Like he's way past his prime because he's gone to the MLS now and whatever, and he's old." First of all, did you see that goal in the MLS? And then like totally like when he came in last. Okay, yes, we were thinking this way about him, about Pandev, about other players at the last season when it was kind of it's been their time for a little bit now. It's been a while. It's been a good run. But when he did come back in more to the side and started featuring more, the quality difference was really apparent. And I just think that like unfortunately it's not really worked with Sabora. We're short obviously with Payac. Sabelli does okay, and fullbacks sometimes do this. They can play on opposite sides or whatever and be competent enough, but it's difficult to imagine. Look, our average age of our players right now, believe it or not, is like 25. Okay, it's not like we have all these like super old players in the squad, and having Mimo on, call it for like a 6-month contract or something, I think would be an easy win-win. Like you've got a guy who's got experience, who has belief, who I don't think is going to start causing some trouble. And I think, did he play with Gila too, by the way? Maybe he did. Maybe he was a little bit too.
He was in Russia. I can't
He
remember
might have
now.
been in St. Petersburg, I think, by
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
As in it. But anyway, I mean, you would assume that he has some respect for Gilardino and would not be causing a rift. That's probably, if there's anything that you'd be concerned about, is somehow he comes in and disagrees with the plan, and then being who he is starts kind of bringing other people with him. But I don't know how many friendly faces are in that squad from before that were part of that older kind of, Destro's gone, some of these other guys are gone. So I think it's like, why not?
Why not? Exactly. Why not? I think we still need that quality back there. I think, as you said, the 6-month contract, which is basically what he's fetching for. There was these rumors about him, the desire to be a coach, and people already jumping, and it's like the brain is like this small, jumping to the conclusion that he's going to be our coach from next year onwards. Guys, he still has to go through the school of becoming a coach. He's not going to be thrown in the first team from the get-go. That means that if there is this type of deal contract they're doing with Genoa, it's with the youth squads. Like, come on, like he needs his time too to become a proper coach, and not himself wanting. He will be the first one to say, I don't want to train the main squad from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that whole thing is just complete rumors. Like we can't assume that. It wouldn't make any sense for us to all of a sudden say, okay, now it's Mimo,
So one thing more I mentioned just earlier about is Coda. I still think that Coda. So going back to the market, I think we're still going to look at, in my opinion, people are talking about 5, 6. I don't think we're going to see that number. We just actually saw one.
Yes, Maturo.
Maturo is exactly young guy. Not too sure yet if he's going to be. I think he's going to be part of the main squad, but he could be interchanged also with the Primavera because of the age, obviously, right? And they can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, I think we're going to look at a total, and he's like a center, if I'm not mistaken, Maturo.
Yeah, I believe so.
So a lot of people are going to complain. They're saying we're overpacked on that side, but that's not true. You never have enough, anyways. But at the same time, because Bani is, he's not that he's great, but he's
but also remind me of the situation with Dragoshin. Is he like a locked-in Genoa player, or is he going back to Juve again after the?
No, he's a locked-in. He's part of the deal. It's like he has been sent on a loan, but with the obligation to buy, coming from the deal from Cambiaso.
Okay, that's right. I forgot about that.
That's
yeah,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, for those, I just was looking up Maturo. I mean, he's 18 years old. There were rumors that Ajax and Inter were both kind of interested in him as a player, and so kind of a good thing that we were able to get this, if that's true. Uruguayan, and would be kind of a defensive player for us. So yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say it's likely maybe he doesn't have a huge amount of role in the initial set, but also we definitely need rotation, and we need to be thinking about the future as well, even if we have an immediate set of needs for this campaign. So
absolutely. So what I was trying to get with this is, like, I don't think we're going to get 5, 6 new signings. We're going to get 2 or 3 key, which one might be, seems like it will be, but nothing is confirmed for Criscito. And then I was thinking, I don't know what might happen in the front. I think in the front, we have the right players. They just need to be groomed a little bit better, in my opinion, by Gilardino, being himself a former Bomber. At the same time, I think Coda is out of shape. I think he just needs to stop eating panettone, has to go to the gym and get at it. Like, come on. Like I'm not saying at 34, 35 years old, he will be again for the third time in a row. It's not too late because he has that 6 goals and the lead of the Capocannoniere for Serie B right now is at 9. So it's not impossible to win it again. I don't think he will be the Capocannoniere again for the third time in a row, but I want him to be the runner-up. What I'm trying to get with that is like, I want him to start to score these goals that's why we got him for.
It's a worry. I mean, it's been a worry for too long, it seems like, in the squad. He's not looked up for it. I don't know what it is. I think the shape part of it is kind of funny. But it's the problem, I think, is I'm not sure exactly like who we have. I mean, Yeboah does seem to fit better in this 4-3-3 system for sure. So perhaps it's him. I know we've been putting
the Alson guy, which you know what I feel about him.
I know when were you biting your nails too when we made that sub on like the 90th minute? It's like, no, we don't need to do that right now. Like, I know that, but Puskas, you know, maybe there's something there. It still seems to me like he's fine, but hasn't really starred or done anything like amazing so far. So, by the way, was it this match or the match before, whereas the first one we've seen from our old friend Stefano Sturaro? Was this the first appearance he's had, or was that the match before this one?
Match before this one.
That's right. So I mean, it is good seeing obviously him in the lineup as well, and getting a little bit more kind of up to speed. I think he kind of seems like another player that could fit pretty well within this system, honestly.
Yeah, again, what I mentioned to you, though, we have 3 players that are almost identical tactically speaking, like Sturaro, like Badel and Strootman, but maybe we will see something different in the midfield. I don't know. I think it still can work this way, because when Badel is back in shape together with Strootman, I think they can do very well, and or with sometimes having Sturaro there too.
Yeah, I mean, they are definitely similar profile players. I think, you know, obviously like Badel and Strootman in particular are of those players in like the longer end of the tooth, the older guys in the team. So, you know, it's Sturaro is not exactly a spring chicken himself, to be honest, but at least we've got like another player in there who can, I know maybe he's not had the biggest sort of following or whatever, but I think he's a competent player and one that could plug in for sure. And so it's good to have him back in and part of the team.
Well, for sure. It's like 3 players, Strootman, Badel, and Sturaro, that anybody would want on their squad, at least in Serie B.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this was actually match day 18. We're at the last one coming up. So this was the second last one of the first round. The match day was quite interesting, I guess, under certain aspects. Under others, it was, I don't know, it did not change too much, because we saw a couple, not too many, but a couple of draws. I'm so surprised. Well, we did mention in the last podcast about I saw a strong Pisa when we saw that tie against Frosinone. But then the super surprise on Saturday, winning 3-0 against Brescia, which was fantastic and phenomenal. And look at where they are actually now in the standings.
I mean, it feels like every week we just keep watching them climb up the ladder. I mean, I remember when they were at least in 18th position and maybe even lower to start.
No, last. They were last, Matt.
Yeah. And now,
at a certain point.
Now they're 4 points off it from us.
Exactly.
Which is, I mean, it just tells you the form that's there, but also like this is kind of what we were expecting them to be like this season.
Yes.
We were expecting this to be, with how well they played, and I thought actually they maybe played a little bit better than Monza in that playoff final. Like they
maybe political, who knows, right?
Yeah, well,
who knows?
We'll try to avoid any political speculation.
Exactly. Then we have Ternana Como, which with a new coach again, but still, Como wins 3-0
Big win.
Away at Terni, which is okay. I don't necessarily like. I love the Umbria, the region, but being that Ternana fans are super duper friends with the multicolored team, it's not multicolored. By the way, for whomever doesn't know, it means the guests of Genova, which means sometimes
Ciclisti.
Ciclisti.
There you go. I'll eventually learn how to pronounce that.
It's like Cittadella.
Yeah, there you go.
Ciclisti, Cittadella. Okay. Then Cosenza Ascoli. Ascoli winning at Cosenza. I feel for our friends at Cosenza. They're dropping points like left, right, and center. Modena Benevento, that's one of the ties that I was mentioning before, 1-1. Yeah. Then, of course, we had the Genoa Frosinone with nothing for us. Then another tie, which was the Regina Bari. So that was the most anticipated match other than ours, because you had us against the first and the second against the third, which were, well, in that point, Bari was above us. But yeah, so they tied 0-0. And for a moment, I was not sure how to feel. I think we were messaging, I can't remember now, but for a certain moment, Bari had a goal and made them, I can't remember if reaching Regina or just going 1 point off from Regina. So I didn't know how to feel about that. In a way, it made Regina go down, but in another way, it also made 2 more teams to climb.
Yeah, I guess it must have been, because they're sitting only 3 points behind Regina now, it must have been one where they would have been level on points with them at the time had they got the goal. But honestly, I think that outcome is probably best for us. I mean, when you look at it right now, so we are technically below Bari on goal difference. I think they are 12 goals superior versus our 6. But look, we're on 30 points, Bari on 30 points, Südtirol, Pisa, Ternana, Parma, all on 26, and directly below us. And then you look at Regina at 33, Frosinone at 36. So I think the draw helped us at least, and we're now a win away from likely being, well, from for sure taking over 3rd place, but perhaps being level on 2nd as well.
Yeah, possibly. It's still interesting, the mass amount of teams within a few points, especially, well, as you mentioned before, Pisa being the one right after us is at 4 points now. However, from them, so let's say from the 5th all the way down to the 14th, which now is Cagliari. Remember Cagliari that reached up almost us, and now it dropped down again to the 14th. By the way, Liverani got sacked, and now there's rumors for Ranieri. Whatever, whomever comes, good luck to them. I'm not saying in a bad way, I'm saying good luck on whatever you need to be doing.
Sure.
But yeah, so 26 to Cagliari 22, that's still 4 points in the amount of 10 teams. 9, but 10,
It's amazing. It's amazing how competitive this league is, and I think there's some really critical matches coming up too. And looking above us, you've got Regina playing Ascoli, which is not an easy match, I don't think, for them.
No.
And obviously we have the critical match against Bari and Frosinone as well. They played Ternana. So like all of those teams in that cluster pretty much have an opportunity to take points off one another. So
absolutely. Just to wrap up, match day 18 before I forget. Then we have obviously Spal that wins against Parma, hence also Parma dropping some points, which is quite surprising. Cittadella in super deep trouble from our friend from the Cittadella US pod and page, losing 2-0 at home against Südtirol.
Yeah.
And then we have Palermo Cagliari, which I just mentioned before for the fact of how many points they're dropping, who the Palermo won 2-1 against them. And last is Perugia winning against Venezia. And that brings that standings for that we just mentioned, that you just mentioned just not too long ago. So I guess just because we have our guest knocking at our door, let's go to a quick break, and we'll be talking about our next coming up match, which is the last match day of first round against Bari at Bari on Boxing Day.
Big match.
My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message.
Welcome back from our quick break. We have a special guest that I should say, is he from England or is he from Italy? No, he's actually from England, but lives in Italy, and we'll let him explain a little bit more. So welcome to our podcast, Jeremy.
Welcome, welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me, both of you. Yes, well, my wife and I, we moved to Italy about 15 years ago now. We decided to pack in our jobs in England. We sold up everything, took a huge risk and relocated to Puglia. And we bought this real tumble down old property quite near Ostuni, actually, if anybody knows Puglia quite well. That's our nearest sort of biggish town.
Nice.
And about 65 kilometers south of Bari. And we both started teaching English as a foreign language to help sort of tick over, and we had some income. And that's been very successful for my partner, Edwina, who's very well known locally as an English teacher. And we've kind of remained here ever since. And so we now have permanent residency here in Italy, and we love it very much.
So how's your Italian?
Well, it's okay spoken. Hearing it is not so good. My wife is very good, I have to say. But my excuse is I'm a little hard of hearing. So when people speak very quickly, or even better in dialetto, which there are
I
many.
know, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That becomes very, very difficult for me. So I have to ask people to speak a little more slowly.
Well, I'm sure one of the first things that you actually learned was like calma, calma.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so yes, but I have to say that my wife is exemplary. She's very good, actually. She's very good at speaking and understanding Italian. In fact, we were watching, I don't know if you've seen it, White Lotus on TV.
Oh, yeah.
Have you seen White
Absolutely.
Lotus? Yeah, on the White Lotus 2. And of course, here in Italy, of course, it wasn't subtitled. So when the Italian actors are speaking Italian to themselves, Edwina was providing really quick translations to me because I would have been asking them to repeat it. But of course they can't, can they? So she was very good. So yeah, it's not too bad. But we enjoyed that. Yeah.
I love that. And
so, as I say,
you were explaining to us before. So you guys have moved down into the region, and then you had got kind of exposure to Bari a little bit. Is that kind of how you became a little bit more of a fan?
Yes, I was. I got 2 6-month contracts working for a furniture company called Atuzzi Spa, who their headquarters are based here in the Bari region.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the second year, in about 2010, some of the guys I was teaching had discovered I liked football, and they said, "Oh, we'll take you to Bari. They're doing pretty well." This was under Gianpiero Ventura at the time, and they were sort of about 8th or 9th. And there was wild talk they might even qualify for the Europa League. So they said, "Come along and we'll take you." So I did. They did. And we went to a Friday night game against Palermo at the San Nicola.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just the wildest thing ever. Essentially. And they took me in the Curve Nord, albeit at the side of the Curve Nord. And it was just amazing. I just felt very buttoned up as an English person, basically, compared with this. Although the guys I went with did use me as an excuse to get beer rather at the bar very quickly, because they said he's an English guy, he needs a beer.
Maybe
so that was
a little bit more with the wine.
I love that.
Yeah. And it was great, and I was just hooked ever since, completely hooked ever since. And so I bought an Abonamento and have been going ever since. And one of my close friends here started coming with me about 5 years ago. And so we we hardly ever miss a home game, and we take some away games in when we can, things like that, so we travel about a bit. And we had, I'll tell you more about the experiences in Serie D in a bit, but that was quite extraordinary, that was.
I bet.
After the bankruptcy, yeah, that's for sure. So that's how it all started. That's how it all started.
I love that.
So that means now you're fully fledged. From you were telling us also before the recording that you're fully fledged now Bari fan. So following them perhaps maybe even more than your old Flame Ipswich FC or the Premier League.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I still follow it, but I don't feel the emotional attachment at all.
Of course,
that's all completely quiet. It's quite extraordinary how that's happened, really, the sort of the metamorphosis.
Makes sense because
nice.
Besides, like, even I'm seeing myself here, and Matt, I don't know if you can say from anything from your perspective, but obviously our heart always will follow Genoa, but it makes it difficult at times because of the time, because of whatnot. But I mean, the difference here is I at least have Toronto FC, which is still nice to watch and whatnot, especially when we had specific players before. We had Criscito, which now returned back to Genova, but at the same time, a little bit different than you. I do follow it, but I still remained, my heart still remained for Genoa because I guess of the quality, the level, and as you have experienced also that passion that you. I mean, there is a lot of passion in England, mind you. Like the amount of teams in England is just like extraordinary. But I don't know. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more. What's the difference between the passion and that followership and camaraderie or whatever? Like the example that you were saying about the Bari against the Palermo fans and whatnot. How is that different compared to England?
Well, in England, it's more controlled. When the very first time I went to Bari, I could not believe the size of the banners that they were trying to get in through the turnstiles. I said to the guys I was with, I said, "Can they really take these in?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And of course, they were being the typical Curb Nord. There were more than one person trying to squeeze through the turnstile. Once, and then occasionally a rather burly carabinieri would dispatch one right across the top of the tower, throw somebody out, and it was kind of like a throwback to when I was young, really. There's that sort of sense of frisson about it, a sort of a sense of imagined danger a little bit, which made it really exciting, which has essentially been taken out of the English game with all the controls and things like that. And although it's not dangerous, you kind of had that sense that it was, and it was a little bit like turning the clock back for me 40 years, when I used to go in the 70s and things like that. So that was really, really very exciting and very, very colourful, and very funny as well, very funny.
I can relate. I was fortunate enough to go as well as sort of a foreigner, and we call our curve the Gradinatas, the Gradinata Nord for us. And it was the same kind of experience because I've been to games in England before. I also support Arsenal, and it's a very, very, very different environment. Like everyone's there. You've got all, like you said, the banners. It's kind of a funny thing too. Like they just had a kind of a piece of paper that they scanned, and as soon as that happened, they just kind of took it, and you're just in the stand. And then people are lighting cigarettes and drinking and doing all this stuff, and all this stuff is just kind of now happening, and you're just part of it. It was pretty fun. So, very different experience for sure.
So if you've been a fan for Bari now for about 15 years, is that right?
About 13 years to be precise.
Because
we've been here a couple of years. Before I'd been.
Go on, sorry.
We were too busy building the house when we first got here. And then it was after I was working in the Tutsi. That happened in about 2009, 2010. The first time I went was 2010. So that'll be sort of 13 years this January, in fact, So, yeah.
So, the point why I wanted to ask that is that you've seen Bari's ups and Bari's downs, and now it looks like it's coming back up.
Yes, yeah, I have to say that. Yes, I mean, obviously they got relegated from Serie A a couple of years after I started following them, but then they seemed to sort of jog along in Serie B. There was these issues over the ownership with the Matarese family. They gave up on it, And then we were taken over, obviously very unsatisfactorily, by this guy Giancastro, who eventually ran the thing into bankruptcy. And that was an incredible shock, was because in actual fact, in 2014, the club came within an ace of bankruptcy then, but they managed to save themselves in what was known as the season of miracles, and they were virtually bottom at Christmas and still made the playoffs.
Incredible.
And that was the first time I'd seen 52,000 in the Sandy Colon, which is just extraordinary.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Oh, people on these sort of Italian culture websites call the Sandy Cola a white elephant. You know, they should never have been built and all this kind of stuff. And I defend that very. And I said, these guys have never seen this place full. They've never seen this place full. And it is just extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary. I mean, one thing Renzo Piano did know about in designing a football stadium, and well, whoever was working with him, was acoustics. It's just incredibly loud, even though you're quite a long way from the pitch, things like that. There's something about that oval that seems to sort of reinforce the sound. And they have this thing called the Bari echo, which you can, the Curva Nord will shout and it just bounces off the Curva Sud, you know, and comes back. You know, it's quite really very effective, that. So anyway, the alarm bells started ringing in 2018, trying to get my dates right, when Bari had quite a good team, including your very own Stefano Sabelli, and had a chance of going up automatically. And but there was all these whispers there was going to be a points deduction for failing to pay the wages. So that was always hanging over.
Right, I remember that.
Club. And I remember traveling up to Parma. My wife, bless her, with her dance school friends, she said, oh, I'm going on an overnight pilgrimage, one of these walks overnight to some santuario. So I said, oh, great, I'll go to Parma that weekend if you're doing that. So I travelled up on the train and had a really nice weekend in Parma watching that game. And Bari lost it 1-0 and effectively lost their chance of going up automatically. And I think they finished 6th in the end, but then suddenly they had this 2-point deduction imposed. And they appealed it, of course. And of course, everything was delayed. The playoffs were delayed while that appeal was being done. Of course, they lost. And so what it meant is that instead of playing home to Cittadella in the knockout phase, they had to play away to Cittadella. And they only drew that game. And so they were knocked out because Cittadella were the higher team.
Yeah.
And within 3 weeks of that, they'd gone bankrupt. I remember my friend sending me a text. I was in the barber shop, and it was the same day that Juventus signed Cristiano Ronaldo.
Oh wow!
And so that was all over the newspapers, you know, about Cristiano Ronaldo's signs for the Juventus and this incredible deal. There was this tiny paragraph about Bari going bankrupt, and this made me very upset and very angry. Actually, I wrote to several sort of journalists about that, saying, you know, you always pick the easy, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so they went bankrupt, and it was incredibly upsetting because there was literally no club. There was no club at all. The stadium was all locked up, the water was cut off, and it had just gone. And you kind of, to get your head around that is quite difficult, because I know in England, if there were serious problems, when it does happen, which doesn't happen very often, people tend to go into administration when they get big points deduction and things like this.
Right.
But to actually go a city the size of Bari with its catchment area was just unbelievable, unbelievable. So, of course, the Mayor Decolo, managed to persuade the FICG to return the license to the city, and he put it out for tender, and De Laurentiis's group took it over. So the club were able to reform themselves in Serie D. And I remember I said to my pal, I said, are we going to do this then? Are we going to do this? And we said we would. So we still got a season ticket in Serie D. And that was just extraordinary. We had some amazing away trips. And this is where being English came in handy because Bari, because of their size and their following, were banned from a lot of away games. So when we went to places like Castrovillieri and Rotondo, we used to turn up and say, "Hello, we're English. We'd like to see the game, please." And so they would sell us a ticket without any problem. And so we could watch Bari away a few times in Serie D. And that's when they started the long climb back, But it was very, very strange, very strange. There were a lot of photographs of Bari playing at some of those out of the way places in Calabria and Sicily. It was very odd, very odd.
So interesting.
But good fun.
Interesting. I see in 2019 they were promoted back to Serie C, but it took them a whole bunch of 3 years before we saw them in Serie B. So what happened in those 3 years? Just took forever. Seemed like, I guess, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, a couple of things happened really, and I think one of them was one of the few missteps that Luigi De Laurentiis has made as the owner. Was in the first year they kept Fornachini as the manager from Serie D, but they spent a lot of money on buying Mirko Antonucci from Spal. Obviously paid him a lot of money to come down and play in Serie C. Okay, and and of course the idea was, the plan clearly was, that his goal was going to fire us straight back up. But they had a slightly indifferent start. I mean, not disastrous. They the first 5 games they won 2, lost 2, and drew 1. And so they fired Cornachini and bought in Vivarini, who's now at Catanzaro. And he did okay. He steadied the ship, and Bari averaged 2 points a game for the rest of the season. But unfortunately, Regina got off to an absolute flyer, and they were 8 or 9 points ahead throughout and just couldn't be caught. So Bari were very steady. And but they couldn't catch him, because that was the year that it was prematurely curtailed by COVID. Because I know Bari played a game at Catanzaro, which they drew, and that was in, I think, early mid-March, and the season was finished. And they said they were going to, assign the positions as they were then to who were in the playoffs and who went up. So Regina went up. There were 9 points ahead, so Bari wouldn't have caught. But then Bari in the playoffs, and of course, because they'd finished second, as I'm sure you know how the Serie C playoffs work, it's quite complex. But Bari got these various buys into the last 8, I think. And of course, they had to wait something like 130 days before they played another game. It was extraordinary. They had to wait a whole long time. Well, they muddled through the playoffs. And eventually got to the final and had to play Reggiana in the final. But they decided Reggiana could play at home. It wasn't 2 legs. And Reggiana won it 1-0. They deserved to win it, in fairness. So that was the first season. The second season, they eventually, this is the mistake he made, they took all summer to decide to dispense with Vivarini. They didn't make a quick decision. They took ages to decide. And of course, Vivarini's doing very well at Catanzaro now, as you probably noticed. And they brought in this guy, Gianni Aiuteri, who was an absolute disaster. And they were absolutely terrible. You could tell the morale was bad. The body language of the players was poor. And Bari actually finished 4th. And it wasn't helpful, the fact that Tonana absolutely ran away with it. I was doing my sort of regular match comments on Twitter. And someone was saying, "Oh, Tonana are doing well." This is back in November. And I said, "Well, I think they'll win the division by 15 points back in November." Well, I was wrong about that. They won it by 23 miles, absolutely miles over anybody. And the morale was very poor, so they flopped in the playoffs. And then they bought in, my name's Mignani now. They bought in Michele. And he steadied the ship, and he kind of ground us out of Serie C. The football wasn't terribly exciting, but they had this system where they were incredibly difficult to beat. And it wasn't terribly exciting, to tell the truth, but it did the business. And of course, the key was they never lost the big games. They never lost the big games. So they managed to get out last year, much to everybody's relief. And this year, they've surprised us all by doing much better than we anticipated, that's for sure. So that's where it is.
I mean, to go from all of that to be in Serie D, struggling in Serie C for some time, and then to be sitting third right now, having a player in the World Cup going pretty far with Khedira. Like,
it's remarkable. I know. No, not at all. Not at all. It's incredible. And of course, Walino Khedira has become a huge cult hero.
I'm sure.
Now.
Yeah.
Even he's a great talisman. He's not the greatest player. He's not the greatest player, but he's an immense character. It's great because everybody loves him.
This isn't a very great comparison, but he reminds me a little bit of Troy Deeney in that way. Kind of like this,
kind
of bag the goals, kind of one of those guys you want to have a beer with, probably has some inappropriate stories somewhere or something.
Troy Deeney, that's quite good actually. Yeah, well, I think Troy Deeney's left foot might be slightly better than what he has.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But the key about this current Bari team, they brought in 3 or 4 new players in the summer. The key one by far has been Elia Caprile, the goalkeeper.
Mm-hmm.
He's just been absolutely fantastic. I mean, he must have saved us 7 or 8 points. I think he's been very, very good. I mean, we liked Fratelli. He was okay in Serie C, but this guy really exceptional. Of course, he's on loan from Napoli, as you probably would understand, like Michael Folorunsho as well. So has been a big key for us this year, the goalkeeper.
Do you think is he like the main ingredient, do you think, because Bari's goals for record is actually pretty darn good as well. I mean, there's obviously you're getting it going on the attacking side too. What's the big difference, do you think?
Well, it is really, but if you've got half an eye on it, really, it's very odd because they've had 2 big wins at home.
Yeah.
6 and a 4 they've scored, which none of us have seen for years. When we beat Brescia 6-2, we were talking to people around us, and none of us could remember the last time Bari scored 6. When was the last time we saw this? And people would go, well, I don't know, I can't remember. Obviously, there'll be some statisticians somewhere who'll wheel it out, but none of us could remember. But they've had 2 big wins, but the rest have been very, very ground out draws. So it tends to come in little surges rather than regular. It's not as if they're scoring 2 and 3 every week.
Mm-hmm.
It tends to come in surges like that, which does kind of slightly distort the picture for me, because the key to me has been the defence.
Yeah.
They brought in Vicar from Spal, and of course with Caprile giving them a lot of confidence. And you've got the amazingly evergreen Valerio De Cesare, who's in his 40th year now.
Wow.
Who was with us throughout Serie D. So he's certainly my favourite player of the current lot. I remember him scoring a last-minute winner at Rotondo in 2000 and whenever it was, 2018. I know. So he's still going and playing pretty well. And the strength really is in the midfield rather than up front. The strength is in the midfield rather than up front. Although one of the improvements this year, I would say, is that Mignani has shown himself to be much more tactically flexible in Serie B than he was in C.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for us. Well, go ahead, Fabry.
No, it's okay. Sorry, I was going to say, last match was against Regina, was almost close enough to have a victory there. But what happened there? Were you satisfied with the tie, or do you think you deserved?
We were very relieved at the tie, very relieved at it, because in truth, I thought Regina looked better than Bari, particularly going forward. They had 2 wide players. Rivas, isn't it, is one.
Mm-hmm.
They've also got Jeremy Menez as well, who's pretty good. And I forget who was playing on the right, forgive me. But they looked much more sort of fluid and speedy going forward. And Bari had to defend very, very well. There were 2 very controversial VAR decisions in that game. I don't know if you've seen any highlights of it. But Dorval, our French right back, scored this breakaway goal after 12 minutes, which was just a hoof up the field, and he beat the last defender, went through and finished it beautifully, but it went to VAR because they reckon he handballed it, and it looked very, very marginal. But that was, having said that, it was one of those things that would have been given in the old days, because once they start looking at VAR about 10 times, it sort of hit him on the, anyway, it's one of those things.
Right.
Then the second half, Regina got a penalty, which I thought was a penalty. But once again, they looked at the VAR. Once they looked at it 10 times, you could see, I think it was Maita just got a foot on the ball, even though he'd come in from completely the wrong side on the guy. And I'm certain the referee, if he hadn't disallowed Dorval's goal, would have given that as a penalty.
Yeah,
is one of the. I think he was being even-handed,
almost like a makeup call to a degree.
Yeah, it did feel like that, to be honest. And we were very relieved to come out of there with a draw, because Regina did look a lot more fluid, although they did run out of steam for the last 15 minutes or so. But Bari had to be real. It was real sort of backs to the wall stuff. So we were relieved to get a point. But I was discussing it with my pal afterwards, and we were saying, could you see us catching them in the league? And you'd have to say probably not, because I think they may have more wins in them, whereas Bari have a lot of draws in them, So we were relieved rather than, and it's a good place to get a point, of course.
Absolutely.
Of course.
Yeah.
Which leads me to ask you about the next game, which is going to be on Boxing Day. So it's the last match of, which preoccupies me for the second leg, but for last match of the first leg. After you guys have played against Regina, now it's against Genoa. And that means also at the end of the season, it's going to be tables turn with respects to where it's going to be played. But same for us. We had last one against Frosinone, and the next one's going to be against Genoa. So what do you expect from that match?
Right. Well, it's going to be tight. It's going to be tight because Bari are difficult to beat. Bari are a difficult to beat team. That there's no doubt. And they can be quite cautious. Genoa, from what I've seen of them, and I've seen mainly highlights, I've watched one or two of their live games live on My Culture. They seem to have a fairly strong physical presence, don't they? They look quite physically strong, which I think will trouble Bari in midfield and up front. And of course, you've got everybody's favourite down here, Massimo Coda, playing, who will certainly get a very warm reception after his stint from Lecce last year. So he'll be very warmly received by the Bari crowd, I can tell you that. So I expect it to be a very tight game. I wouldn't expect there to be more than one goal in it. In truth, I'm certainly not expecting a modernist extravaganza at all. I think Genoa will present a much more physical test for Bari. And of course, there's some good players there too. Some very good players. I mean, you're not fourth for nothing, are you? And just had a slow start. And of course, you've got our old friend Stefano Sabelli playing, haven't you?
That's right.
Is he playing regularly?
Yeah. Outside of his role, but he's definitely, bringing his duties back home. Like he's playing on the left side rather than on the right side because we're missing a left back. But he's still doing well, even though it's out of his role.
Well, he must have started almost all of our matches, honestly. I mean, since Payac had been injured, and even before then, I think he was preferred almost to Hefty on the right-hand side. And so I'm sure you'll see him. He'll have a bit of a homecoming, I guess.
Yes, he's a big favourite here. If I can tell you that just on that point, when he was playing for us, of course, he left during the bankruptcy season. He was one of the many players that just left us when we went bankrupt. And he played for several years for Bari. Where we sit in the Tribuna of Est, his little entourage, used to sit right in front of us, in the row in front of us at each game. And his girlfriend must be from Bari because they got married in Bari a couple of years ago. There's some very nice pictures in the local press and on social media of them getting married here. And him and his friends and her used to sit just in front of us. where we sit, which is quite funny.
Wow.
That's hilarious. Well, there
And
you
what
go.
about-
Well,
Yeah.
it should be a good one. I mean, I don't know, Fabry, if you have an idea on how this game will turn out. I kind of have to agree with Jeremy that I feel like this is going to be a bit of a struggle, honestly, especially hearing a little bit more about Bari's playing style and understanding that way. I don't know. We've been more open recently with Gilardino and his kind of lineup, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is one where maybe an entertaining game, but probably a lower game in terms of chances created and all of that.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I was looking also like to Jeremy's point, they are the team that lost the least. Like they only lost 2 games. To his point, it's very tough to beat them. Not only we're going to be at the San Nicola, so it's in their home territory. I don't have the specific stats with respects to what they do at home, but to your point, Matt, they are one of the most prolific, together with Regina and Pisa now, actually, for the goals made, which is a little bit scary because for us it's a little bit on the opposite side from even though, to Jeremy's point, that we're a little bit like strong physical perspective when it comes to the players, we're not like that prolific like them, making a lot of goals out there. So yeah, I can see the match actually being a lot studied between both sides, trying different aspects. I'm hoping not to see like what we call in Italian catenaccio, meaning one of the two is going to be attacking and the other one is just going to play all 11 players in their own half.
Sure.
I don't like to see that. I like to see more.
I'm not sure we'll see that though. I mean,
I don't think so either. I mean, it's not Genoa style. From what I see, it's definitely not Bari style. So it might be a very interesting match, even though it might not have a lot of goals.
Yeah.
So I guess.
Well, I can give you. I can give you guys, you Genovese, some hope here. Okay, definite hope. All right, is that they're expecting a very, very big crowd on Santa Stefano.
Okay.
Already they're saying there's 25,000 tickets sold already.
Oh wow!
And so they're expecting. So they're hoping to get 40,000 plus on Monday night. Okay, which is very exciting when you're there. Except it's a nightmare parking and all that kind of stuff. But what I will say to you, what I will say for you guys to cheer yourselves up, in all the years I've been following Bari always fluff their lines on a very big night. And there's a very, very big crowd there. They never play well. It's unbelievable. I mean, we had, it was the other week against, we had 38,000. Was it against Tonana? And it was 0-0. And against Palermo, there were 35,000 earlier in the season. Because in the summer, you see, it's like now at Christmas, an awful lot of diaspora back in town. A lot of diaspora back in town. They love to come see Bari. So, and of course, last year in Serie C, it was even worse because we had a Catanzaro had lost, and Bari were home to Fidelis Andria. Believe it or not, Fidelis Andria. And all Bari had to do was win that game because it was a late kickoff and they knew exactly what to do. And there were 28,000 people there to watch Fidelis Andria, and Bari couldn't score. It was 0-0. So every time they do this, so we're hoping that only 5,000 people will turn up and they might. Well, but that's not going to happen. So there's a big hope there for Genoa.
So you're making us definitely smile, which is great. I hope that smile is not going to make it disappointing after, say, Santos.
Well, Bari's
Boxing Day.
Yeah, Bari's home record is only 1-2 and drawn 6, and lost 1.
Quite interesting.
So it's not that exactly. I mean, they're not easy to beat, but they don't turn many people over. And the bigger the crowd, it just never seems to happen. It's just very strange.
Right.
Because I think, can I ask you a question about Genoa here? Genoa are very well supported. I think they're the best supported team in B, aren't they?
There's 20,000 in the season.
That's probably fair to say.
Yeah. and that seems quite consistent, doesn't it? Consistent. I have, in all my years of following football, I've never known a fan base so elastic as the Baresi. I mean, I've sat in crowds from 3,500 to 55,000 at San Nicola.
That's incredible.
It's just incredible. Yeah. And so, it's very much a narrative town. If you get a narrative going,
and the sky's the momentum and you get the fans.
Yeah, but if there isn't, I have to be honest about that. If there's any Baresi listen to this, I don't mean to give offense, but I'm right.
So if you, before I pass it off to you, Matt, Jeremy, what I think you mentioned it, but I just want to make sure if I heard it right. So what do you think is the final score, in your opinion, if you had to give a prediction?
Score predictions. Well, I think it'll be 1-0 either way.
Either way.
Okay.
Way. So if it was the Bari way, who do you think is going to be on the sheet, on the scoring sheet?
Or Ruben Botta from 35 meters.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. Wonder goal. I like that.
Okay, Matt, up to you. What do you think?
Like he did against Modena. But if Genoa get in front, I think Bari will find it very difficult. I think if Genoa get in front,
but it does seem like a game. Whoever ends up scoring first is maybe, in this case, could be where the game is won. But
differences,
I think we probably are going to draw this one. I think it'll maybe be 1-1. It's been probably traditional to pick Coda to score. I don't know if I would, honestly, with his form. Maybe we'll get. Maybe we'll see an interesting one. I can't say Puskas because I don't think he's going to start, but perhaps we'll see one from Aramu. With all of his creativity,
Have you got Pushka? Because he was on loan with us for a while, wasn't he?
We do. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. We need much younger, of course.
There'll be a couple players returning back there. That's right. I forgot about that.
So I'm gonna hope. My prediction is I'm gonna hope for the X's to, there's always that Murphy's Law about the X's that are going to be detrimental in winning their matches. So between Sabelli, Coda, which is not an X, but he was against their biggest opponent, which is Lecce, and now also Puskas. But I think similarly to Jeremy, I think Genoa is going to put up a fight. They need the points. Not that Bari doesn't, but the Gilardino, which is now going to be at his fourth match, is going to be bringing a lot of he has pumped up the players to a certain point that he's just going to say, go there and play it. You can make it. Having said that, I think that it's going to be a tough one. So I can see a 0-0. And if there is a win, it'll be a 1-0. So I think we're all in sync with that one. And I'm hoping, because of the old trend that we used to have when we were winning, only basically on the road, I'm hoping for Genoa to have that win.
That road form. Yeah, we'll see, I suppose. This is a good one. I mean, a number of games we were talking earlier in the top six are going to be happening over the next few match days. So we'll see. I'm sure it'll be a great match, though. A lot of people looking forward to this one.
Yeah. If you're getting it on TV, watch out for the light show, the pre-game light show.
Oh, yeah,
they've actually spent a lot of money on the semi this year. They've put in all these new LED lights, and there's a very good pitch now as well. Very good, completely relayed the pitch in the summer, and it's really good, really nice pitch.
Good.
So there's no excuses for either side on that.
Very opposite to Genoa. Unfortunately, the pitch is like one of the worst, I guess, between
the old school mud in front of the goal and pigeons, and I kind of love it, honestly. But
that part was okay. It's just like the Campo di Patata, like the potato field that I get at the Ferrari. Holes everywhere. It's just like horrible.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you've got 2 games a week, haven't you, most of the time, haven't you? With Sampdoria.
Yeah. At least once a week, right? Because they usually alternate. One weekend is with one and the other weekend is the other.
But still, good amount of use.
Yeah.
More use than normal.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So I guess we're at actually, no, we did say your predictions, right, Matt?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I guess we are at a wrap. I wanted to thank you very much for joining us on our pod, Jeremy. That was just beautiful.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it's our pleasure, definitely, to hear your story about living now in Puglia and so on. It's just like beautiful. What's the temperature actually right now?
Well, it's evening times. It's about sort of 7 or 8 degrees, which is
Okay.
okay, isn't it? It just gets when you live in the Campania like we do, the houses get a
A
little
bit
bit
different,
damp,
right?
But yeah, but it's not Toronto or New York cold.
Of course not.
Pretty sure about that, that's for sure. Yeah. I still haven't quite recovered from my trip up the CN Tower, you know,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
which I discovered I wasn't so great with heights when I got up there.
So once again, I wanted to thank Jeremy for being a tremendous guest on our podcast. This is episode 31. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us. Looking forward to the Merry Christmas, first of all, or Happy Holidays for whomever else. We will be seeing you on Boxing Day. You can listen to our podcast on any of your choice, and you can follow us on any Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Drop us a line, comments, or whatnot, and we'll see you next week. And always and never forget,
Forza Genoa.
Forza Genoa.
You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening and see you next week.